This is episode 114 of Decoding Fox News, and I'm your host, Juliet Jeske. Each week, I watch and analyze a whole heck of a lot of Fox News and then break it down. I watch all the Fox News you'd never want to. Let's get into it. My favorite headline of all time, Trump's Toadies take Manhattan.
The most underreported major story. If you're sitting there, I watch Sunday shows. Not one outside hours was actually going to point out over 100,000 people showed up in a place that he lost by 15 points. I know people came from Pennsylvania, New York, obviously. They sat for hours. It was 50 degrees, maybe even lower. You know how windy it gets at those beaches? Steve knows. At Wildwood, New Jersey, 100,000 people that couldn't get close to the stage. They want to be a part of it.
A tender-hearted woman saw a poor, half-frozen snake. His pretty-colored skin had been all frosted with the dew. Poor thing, she sighed.
Donald Trump was speaking on Saturday in Wildwood, New Jersey, and you see it right there that the MAGA supporters who attended this event started leaving in the middle of Donald Trump's speech. How humiliating, how embarrassing. The crowd began thinning. People began walking back to the boardwalk while Donald Trump was ranting and raving like a lunatic. I want to give a hat tip to Aaliyah Schneider at Aaliyah Reports. She's there with this first-hand video recording of people leaving this event in mass.
An absolutely rabid crowd of Trump supporters was cheering Trump's brain-crumbling statements in Wildwood, New Jersey over the weekend. But then half the crowd just left while Trump was still speaking, apparently sick of the stuff that was just dribbling out of his mouth. And then finally, here is video. Trump is still speaking, and this entire area that was full at the beginning of the speech is empty. I'll play a little bit of the audio for you.
Trenton and Princeton. And this is where generations of New Jersey patriots helped build this country.
So anyway, it's almost completely cleared out. Trump was still speaking. Reports are it started to get a little bit chilly. But it was, I mean, listen, it was a little cool that night in New Jersey. I agree with that. But the crowd starting to clear out, and really a lot of them heading for the proverbial hills.
Now, very quickly, I want to give a shout out to the two clips that I've added there to the Fox clip. And that would be Ben from Midas Touch. I don't want to butcher his last name, so I'm just going to say Ben from Midas Touch. And then we have Dave Pakman, both great independent journalists who are doing great work. And I just wanted to add something very funny. Black Knight, who's probably listening to this recording at some point, he will be. I know he's a fan of the podcast. Posted this hysterical photo, which was Ben just got married over at Midas Touch. I don't know him. I've never worked with him. He works with Black Knight and many others, Anthony Davis as well. He posted this photo from his wedding, and the photo from Ben's wedding was Ben with two little dogs who were dressed in tuxedos. And it was just like, congratulations on your wedding. And I, like the animal freak that I am, thought immediately, was that a dog wedding? And then I see two little dogs in tuxedos, and I'm like, was that a gay dog wedding? Are you going to push me over the edge into joy and happiness with a gay dog wedding? Now, of course, it was not. It was a normal wedding of two human beings, and that's great, too. I'm all for weddings. But just the photo of the two dogs in tuxedos, I could just, I could watch, I'm one of these people that if you go through my Instagram, a lot of pets, a lot of cats and dogs. So back to the point of my clip, I got a little distracted there with the image of cute little, they look like they were miniature poodles or something. I'm not sure. They were cute, adorable little dogs in tuxedos. I'm distracted again thinking about it because, I mean, how could you not get cuter than that? Anyway, so the clip, they both pointed out, and the source, I want to give her a shout out. Aaliyah Schneider was the source that Ben at Midas Touch used. And thank you so much for citing your source there. That's always appreciated. As an independent journalist myself, I like to cite all of my sources as often as possible. They pointed out that people left in the middle of this crazy rally in Wildwoods, New Jersey. Other journalists have pointed out, several, The Trump claimed there was 100,000 people there, which that's hard to pull off. And many said that no, the area wouldn't even fit. You couldn't even fit 100,000 people there. And then even Jesse Waters later that night said that there were 30,000 people there, or later that week said there were 30,000 people there. So no one's really sure how many people were there, but it's probably not even close to 100,000. And yes, people were leaving in the middle. And I have watched this entire speech, and I broke it down. I'm excited. I'll tell you about it now. I'm planning on doing a podcast based on all of the lies in the speech. It might be a two-parter because there were like 35. There were more lies than that, but it was like 35 kind of major lies. And I broke them up into small clips. So that's going to be quite in the endeavor. I'm hoping to get it done this week. But I watched the whole thing, and you could see more than once Donald J. Trump was like, yeah, people are staying. They're not leaving. People aren't leaving. And he was basically like acknowledging the fact that people were leaving. People were leaving because it's the same speech. If you've seen one Donald J. Trump speech, you've seen all Donald J. Trump speeches. He just sort of puts it all in the same thing, blends it up together, and it's braggedy. Everything is terrible. Everything is terrible. Poor me. Everything is terrible. Braggedy. That's it. It's a whole speech. Oh, and then Biden's dumb and old. There you go. Got it. Odin and Thor are very active right now. If you're hearing little thumpity behind me as I'm speaking, those are cats running around my 450 square foot apartment. So again, with my headline, it's very difficult to write headlines for these newsletters because I'm often cramming like 3 or 4 topics in, and I kind of want to get them all in the headline. I still battle with this every single week. But my favorite headline ever in the history of Decoding Fox News, Trump's Toadies take Manhattan. Woo! So last week, Fox News finally dropped its obsession with pro-Palestinian protesters and moved on to the confusing and convoluted criminal hush money trial Trump faces in Manhattan. The network also suddenly forgot about the Israel-Hamas War while producing several segments dedicated to an NFL kicker's commencement speech at a Catholic university. Most of the talking heads on Fox don't seem to understand what Trump's hush money trial is about and don't even try to explain it to viewers. The network basically reduces the entire endeavor to an extended festival of victimhood for the former president to whine about how horribly mistreated he is by various judges, prosecutors, the Department of Justice, the press, the Democratic Party, and President Joe Biden. Things got even more ridiculous last week as Speaker Mike Johnson, along with other lawmakers and Trump toadies, descended upon the Manhattan criminal court dressed in navy suits, white shirts, and oversized red ties. In the unofficial uniform of their dear leader, they resembled a low-rent Trump army of sorts. Anyone watching Wesley Fox last week might have missed out on stories about severe flooding in Indonesia, a slight dip in inflation, and various updates on the Israel-Hamas War and the war in Ukraine. Shows I covered last week: Fox and Friends, The Five, The Ingraham Angle. And I just did the solid 15 hours. I didn't do anything extra. There was no need to. I did pick up, this was a monster undertaking, the House Judiciary Committee hearing on putting AG Merrick Garland in contempt of Congress over these audio recordings of Biden. And then the House Oversight Committee had the exact same hearing, but at night, where famously Marjorie Taylor Greene got into it. Marjorie Taylor Greene, I will add, started it pretty much from the very beginning of the hearing. She was interrupting and being obnoxious and saying things out of order. And then she started hurling insults at Representative Jasmine Crockett of Texas, and Jasmine Crockett of Texas was hurling insults back. And it was kind of brilliant and amazing. And I don't care about this whole they're stooping to their level, it's a bad decorum. Watch parliaments from any other country. We are meek in comparison. So the next clip for this week, Eric Shawn, our new hero over at Fox News, he is part of the legitimate news team. And I always like to look for the light, the hope, the spark out of the darkness when I watch Fox, and Eric Shawn is just that. Now, he's not grandstanding. He just speaks bluntly and straight to the point. And that rarely happens on Fox, especially when it's not flattering to Donald J. Trump. So I just wait for these moments. He hasn't given me one yet this week, but I have hope. I have hope in Mr. Eric Shawn. So this is from Tuesday. He's standing in front of the Manhattan courthouse where Trump's trial is happening. This is from Fox and Friends.
Good morning, Ainsley. Well, Michael Cohen back on the stand today after yesterday tying former President Trump directly into the alleged illegal scheme to falsify business records and hide his affair with Stormy Daniels. Cohen, of course, the longtime former lawyer, loyal fixer. Well, he turned on President Trump, implicating him in that scheme to pay Stormy and do it, he said, to protect the president's presidential election campaign.
And boom goes the dynamite. Shawn's words were like daggers to the giant balloon of delusion multiple Fox News hosts have created about this case. Cohen tied Trump directly to the crime of falsifying business records. So I just want to add that some folks on social media have questioned the existence of a legitimate news team at Fox News. It does exist. It's not a mythical thing that I've created to add tension for this project. The legitimate news team has been a source of pride for Fox since the network's inception. The serious journalists at Fox are long suffering as they've been discounted and diminished by the more popular opinion-based hosts. The division also took a serious blow as Fox News decided to lay off its entire investigative unit of reporters a month after it paid Dominion Voting Systems $787.5 million in the largest defamation settlement in history. The investigative reporting team hadn't contributed to the mountain of lies that triggered a lawsuit from Dominion, but its work didn't generate ratings, so it was expendable. Fox's #1 show is still The Five, a program that often features viral animal videos, terrible jokes spoken by Greg Gutfeld, and Judge Jeanine Pirro throwing pens at her co-hosts, as well as going off into tirades of conspiracy theories. So yeah, that's what Fox really cares about. But there is a legitimate news team, and they often fight with the opinion news team. And it was very apparent if you read some of the documents involving the Dominion Voting Systems lawsuit. There was this huge power struggle between legitimate news and opinion news. And guess who won out? So next up, we have Trump's army of toadies doing his dirty work. Now, this is based on the lawmakers who traveled from D.C. to New York City to stand and sit or whatever in Trump's criminal trial for moral support for the president, former president. And yes, many of them were dressed exactly like him with like a navy suit and a white shirt and a red tie, looking bizarro. To see 9 different men dressed exactly like was very strange. Speaker Johnson was one of these individuals. And in this clip from the Ingraham angle from Wednesday, Laura Ingraham talks about how she was, clutching her. There's a lot of clutching of pearls this week. She was clutching her pearls over the fact that other people in the media were saying that these surrogates of Trump were getting around the gag order. So that's what she's going to discuss here. And she finds this hilarious.
Byron, there's been accusations that Trump is using his surrogates to get around the gag order now. Watch. Byron?
Well, the gag order applies specifically to Donald Trump and Donald Trump alone. I think improperly so, but that's what it does. I've been hearing you criticize Michael Cohen. You are not covered by the gag order.
Kidding.
I'm not
Thank
either.
Goodness. What would I do if poor Judge Shawn?
Oh boy, that would be tough.
I know he loves us over here.
And neither is anybody else here. So it's kind of a kooky idea that a gag order should apply not only to the person it specifically applies to, but everybody who agrees with that person. Not a good idea.
I get the sense. Oh, go ahead, Shawn.
Well, CNN is asking that question of Doug Burgum. Have they ever asked that question of Michael Cohen?
How about every website? How about Axios, Politico? Has the White House called and told you Joe Biden is actually catching up in the polls, and he really has a lot of vim and vigor and a spring in his step? Go.
Right.
Have they ever said that to you?
Reprint that, right? Exactly.
I mean, come on.
Thanks,
Shawn and Byron.
So that's Laura Ingraham speaking with Byron York of the Washington Examiner and Shawn Duffy of Fox News. And they're both like, ha, 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 ha. How dare they? She included clips of various other media personalities basically saying that Trump was using these lawmakers as surrogates to attack the judge and witnesses, which is exactly what he was doing. Speaker Mike Johnson called the case corrupt and a sham, called the court system corrupt, called the case an illegitimate sham, and said that this ridiculous prosecution that is not about justice, it's all about politics. It's a direct quote. Now, the reason why there is a gag order is because Trump's fans are nuts, and they have harassed other figures that Trump has criticized within an inch of their lives. So we know he's not going to show restraint. We know that he's going to just go straight for people's throats, and that's why this gag order was issued. And so Trump figured out, if I get these, my toadies to show up. And what is a toady, you may ask? A toady is it's a slang term for somebody who's basically this I just think you're so neat. You're so amazing. I just look at you and I just hope that one day you will grace me with your presence and you will say that I am part of your little club of fans, of your, I'm a toady. I'm a toady. That's how I picture them. That's how I picture them in my mind. Toadies. Toadies. They can be in any group. Any in the art scene in New York City, and performers in New York City. I've known people who are toadies to other performers. I can't stand toadies. Love me. No, I don't love you. I hate you. Anyway, I'm a lone wolf. I have no toadies. I have 2 cats. That's what I have. Anyway, moving on to this one is just short, sweet, stupid. Wednesday, Jesse Waters actually said this out loud.
And the other woman, I forget who it was. No, the guy that said the guy's sleeping. He's meditating, Greg.
Yes, of course.
He's in a meditative state. And when you're defensive about something, you avoid something. Trump's not defensive of being old and tired. He can shut his eyes and not feel bad about it like Sleepy Joe.
I mean, Jesse Waters, you keep giving us ammunition to prove that you're the dumbest man on television. I said it. I don't care. I'm not going to hold it in. I'm not going to be like, well, Jesse Waters is, entitled to his opinion. Yes, he's entitled to his opinion, but no one would believe that. None of his followers would believe that somebody like Trump, who regularly stands on stage and just screams at people, would meditate about anything. So it just can't even. It was so wacky last week. So next up, we have there again. I've said this before because the 2 House congressional hearings that I sat through was a total of almost 8 hours, and I did watch all of them, and I did cut them up, and paid subscribers got little edits. I have one more coming for the paid subscribers. I kind of ran out of steam after doing 2 of them. But the thing about watching that, it was just constant pearl clutching. And by pearl clutching, they were just like, how dare you? How dare you? And I'm going to clutch my pearls, clutch them tightly to my collarbone as I get the vapors and wonder why I'm so deeply offended that you would even suggest that Joe Biden would do something as horrible as try to, raise money off of a scandal. What? So, this is about, so last week the Biden campaign made a short video where Joe Biden challenged Trump to debate, and then he joked, I hear you're free on Wednesdays. And that was a joke because during this criminal trial, the court doesn't convene on Wednesdays. The judge decided we're not going to have court on Wednesdays, give everybody a day off, so that they all know and they can plan around. So that was a little, nod to this criminal trial. Now, Judge Jeanine Pirro and Dana Perino both lost their minds over this. And here's the first clip. It's Judge Jeanine. This is also from Wednesday, the 5.
Donald, I hear you're free on Wednesdays.
I thought also that I hear you're free on Wednesdays. I found that so offensive. And maybe not just because obviously everybody knows I have a long relationship with Donald Trump, but it's just you orchestrated this. You hunkered this guy down. Mm-hmm. And now you're over there sticking the knife in and say, hey, I hear you're free because court's open on Wednesdays.
I also want to quickly point out that President Biden did not orchestrate this trial. This trial is happening in Manhattan. It has nothing to do with the federal government. So let's just move on from there. Also, Judge Jeanine has had a long relationship with Trump for years. Trump issued a pardon at the end of his term for her ex-husband, Albert J. Pirro Jr. Pirro was convicted in 2000 on conspiracy and tax evasion charges. He deducted $1.2 million of his personal expenses as business write-offs. Pirro was convicted while his wife, Judge Jeanine, was the district attorney of Westchester County. He served 17 months of a 29-month prison sentence after being released on good behavior and attending a treatment program for alcoholism. Judge Jeanine and Albert divorced 13 years later after a 6-year separation. I also want to point out that, of course, he wasn't in prison when he was pardoned, but it did expunge it from his record. So this is Dana Perino also expressing outrage over this, but I'm free on Wednesdays.
Now, to your point on the free on Wednesdays, not only was it undignified, funny for them, they're fundraising off of it.
Yes.
Okay, it's like the T-shirts free on Wednesdays.
I already bought Jesse one of those.
And again, clutch your pearls, clutch them tightly. Oh my, how would I ever go on with such brazen hypocrisy when I see this? Well, Trump notoriously sold merchandise with his mugshot from the criminal trial he faces in Georgia for his role in trying to overturn the election in that state. He even sold fabric swatches from what he claimed was the suit he wore the day he was booked in Fulton County, Georgia. It's an absolutely absurd thing to sell to your fans because no one knows how many swatches of fabric you could cut from a suit. So, of course, you could make thousands of these ridiculous things and all claim they came from that suit. Absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Now, the final clip about this case, it comes from Steve Doocy, keeping it real, over on Fox and Friends. This is from Monday. And he also points out something to Greg Jarrett, one of the Fox News legal analysts.
Well, and Greg, so it sounds like he's the next to the last witness. There's supposed to be 2 more witnesses. He's number 1, and then somebody else. But it sounds like the prosecution knows that he's got the problematic background. And so far, they brought in other people to essentially say the same stuff he's going to say. Now he's going to take the stage, say it, but then they're going to go, you can't trust that guy. But then the prosecution's going to say, yeah, but what about those other people who said the same thing?
So that's a great example of Steve Doocy goes rogue, which we always love. He's basically just says right out that Michael Cohen's not the only witness. There's other people corroborating what he said. Bada bing. That's it. That's all he said. But for someone to say that on Fox is an act of rebellion in many ways. And I also want to say, when I watch Fox and Friends and Steve Doocy is not on the show, it's like when Judge Jeanine is not on the 5. I'm crestfallen. I just figure, like, why am I even bothering? Because, yes, I might get Lawrence Jones saying something stupid, or Brian Kilmeade, or maybe even Ansley Einhart. She's rare that I pull clips from her, but I might get something from someone, right? But without Steve Doocy, it's just like, this isn't even a show. Steve Doocy is the glue that holds this thing together. Last week, they also did a bit. I wish I could have used the clips. They just weren't really usable. I'll mention it very briefly. They did a series of segments where they sent Steve Doocy to Dallas. I believe it was Dallas. It was somewhere in Texas to do a bit about a faith-based pickleball situation where one of these mega churches decided they would have pickleball as part of their outreach programs, so you could play pickleball at the church and they could proselytize to you. And there was Steve Doocy is a pickleball enthusiast, because of course he is. Look at the man. And he's always like, I love pickleball. You know what? I was playing pickleball this morning. I love the pickleball and the Yahtzee and the newspapers and the rotary phones. Anyway, now, before I move on to the next topic, because we're going to finally move off the Trump trial into some really strange territory, I want to give a shout out to my sponsor. And who might that sponsor be but listeners of this podcast and readers of my Substack newsletter, which are basically both the same thing. One's the written version of the podcast and one's the podcast. If you'd like to become a paid subscriber to Decoding Fox News, you can get exclusive content that varies from week to week. You can go to Substack, and the minimum is $5 a month. You could just try it out for 1 month if you want. You could sign up for a year for $55. Either way, it's great. You can also go to my Patreon and become a paid supporter that way for any amount that you want per month. I have anything from $5 to $25 a month, and they also get exclusive content. And that's about it. If you can't afford to become a paid subscriber or paid supporter, you can share the podcast, share the newsletter, tell your friends. It helps get the word out. Give me a good review somewhere on whatever platform you listen to. Over half of you are coming from Apple Podcasts. Thank you very much. Also, if you can download the episode when you're listening, that helps get my numbers up and helps show other people that people are actually paying attention to Decoding Fox News. If I ever get an advertiser, I think the perfect fit would be any company that makes stuff for cats. Because I talk about my 2 cats during the podcast, which they're very quiet right now, Odin and Thor. Thank you guys so much. I can't control them. Again, I live in 450 square feet. Picture a 1-car garage. Picture all of your worldly possessions and yourself and 2 cats in 450 square feet. That is my life. Many New Yorkers live like this. I'm not unusual. But and I'm actually incredibly grateful for my tiny, tiny apartment. So moving on, this one is just ridiculous. This one, I was just like ready to throw stuff at my computer. An NFL kicker makes a commencement speech and Fox freaked out. So Fox News has a very strange relationship with the freedom of speech and expression. Fox News hosts tend to get easily outraged when anyone in the public sphere says anything they don't agree with. At the same time, Fox News personalities also get extremely upset when a conservative is criticized for expressing his or her opinion. So it's a constant clutching of pearls when it's like, so if you are a trans individual and you go on TikTok and you make a heartfelt video about being gender fluid or non-binary, something that Fox really loves to make fun of, and let's say you've got like a nose ring and your hair is pink, and you look a little unusual, and Fox would put that on a loop and say, haha, look at this trans person, right? They would show that clip over and over and over again, say horrible things about you. That's what Fox would do. But if you're a conservative and you say something and someone outside the conservative realm is like, that was a bit, they're like, how dare you criticize a good Christian man? And you're like, yeah, it's kind of obvious you guys are not consistent on this freedom of speech situation. So last week, a video surfaced of a man named Harrison Butker, who is a kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs NFL team. He was giving a commencement speech at a Catholic university. His speech was extremely political and included misogynistic and homophobic themes. So I'll just read a caption from it. He said, "I think it is you, the women who have had the most diabolical lies told to you. Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world." Now, as a divorced person, that's especially hilarious. So on Thursday, that's just a clip, just a snippet. I have seen the whole thing. It's monstrously long. Laura Ingraham also included a short segment about Butker's speech. And here you go. I'm going to break down some of her language because she's very coded here.
Truth is under attack everywhere we turn. Facts that we once took for granted when we were growing up, which the left wants us to believe are somehow now controversial or even hateful.
So let's break down or decode that language. Here we go. She's talking about a speech. The speech was based on one man's opinion. She says, truth is under attack everywhere we turn. Facts that we once took for granted when we were growing up, which the left wants us to believe are somehow now controversial or even hateful. So she's referring to this man's opinions as truth and facts.
My beautiful wife, Isabel, would be the first to say that her life truly started when she began living her vocation as a wife and as a mother. All of my success is made possible because a girl I met in band class back in middle school would convert to the faith, become my wife, and embrace one of the most important titles of all, homemaker.
That really rattled all the right cages. They usually like it when men get emotional. Why do they like that? Well, notice what he's not saying there. He wasn't saying that women should stay at home or that women should never be doctors or lawyers or whatever they want to be or own their own businesses. He said that one of the most important titles of all, homemaker. Well, because home matters.
So I just kind of squinted the whole time she was speaking, mainly because she's done this before, where she'll promote sort of this trad wife, which is short for traditional wife sort of myth. And she has never married herself. She's not even divorced. She's never married. And she adopted children. She's had this incredibly intense career, very demanding job. So she's been a working single mother for a very large portion of her life. Her kids are now older. They're, almost adults. So it's kind of like, why on earth would you not, bring that up, mention it, kind of soften what you're saying there a little bit. I think there's no shame whatsoever in being a working single mother, but many of my friends are working single mothers. My sister was a working single mother, but I don't understand why you would also just kind of also champion this home. Well, who's your homemaker then, Laura Ingraham, if this is like the pinnacle of everything? I guess you hire someone, I don't know, which I get. No shame in that either, but the hypocrisy was a bit. So again, this commencement speech was in the top 5 topics for Fox last week. There are multiple segments about it. They've even included segments about it this week. And I'm just baffled because I'm like, why? They are upset. The people, good folks at Fox, are upset that people like myself and others criticized this public speech. And yet, Fox sees nothing wrong with criticizing pro-Palestinian protesters, from criticizing, any various number of activists on TikTok, people who express their views about being trans, people who express their views about being left-wing even. Fox will have no hesitation in attacking the words that these people speak. It's kind of part of being publicly opinionated. You're going to deal with criticism, including if you give this kind of, I thought his speech was odd because he kept talking about himself and really, throwing his politics out there at a commencement speech when that's really not appropriate. You should be talking about this is your future. You're facing your future. You're going to go out there and you're going to kill it. You're going to do a great job, everyone. That's what even if you want to talk about Jesus and being Catholic, you can do that. I just don't understand why you are talking about yourself a lot during a commencement speech. It's a bit odd, especially when he's getting weepy about his wife. It's like, how did this become a speech about you? Maybe that's for another time. I'm a little confused why you're talking about yourself in such an intimate way during a commencement speech. Odd. But anyway, my whole point is, I don't know how he was harmed. Yes, he got criticized by people who don't agree with him. That comes with the territory. If you're a liberal, you get criticized by conservatives. If you're conservative, you get criticized by liberals. Whatever. He wasn't canceled. He still has a job. His jersey is selling out all over the country. It's the #1 seller in the NFL right now. And he is basically paving the way for his post-football career as some type of motivational speaker or public speaker where he goes around to conservative groups and talks about his amazing life as a kicker. Most football kickers, I feel silly saying it every time I say it, have fairly short careers because it doesn't take much but a few missed field goals to be put out to pasture. So he's kind of on borrowed time. He's been part of a team that's won 3 Super Bowls, which is exceptional for most football players. And again, as a kicker, I'm not sure how much he contributed to those. I don't know. I don't pay attention to the Kansas City Chiefs. I should. They're from Missouri, but I don't care. I'm a baseball fan. Go Cards. Anyway, I don't see how he was harmed. If anything, all this publicity helped him. And so I don't understand why you're like, how dare you criticize him? As I often say on Decoding Fox News, if you want to live in a criticism-free zone, don't put your personal opinions out on television. Don't put them on the internet. Just, you can live fairly anonymously if you want. But when you start making speeches and you're going to be televised and the whole 9 yards, some people are going to probably criticize you, regardless of what you say. You could make a speech tomorrow saying, I love ice cream. Ice cream is so great. Ice cream is my favorite thing to eat. And someone's going to be like, how dare you? You're just encouraging obesity and hypertension and diabetes with sugar and fat, and it's junk food, and how dare you? That's the world. That's how it works. Anyway, moving on. This next one is a gem. I say that with total sarcasm. This is from Monday. I debate often, who is the dumbest person on Fox? Is it Jesse Waters or is it this next person? And this next person is kind of the female version of Jesse Waters, and that would be Rachel Campos-Duffy. Rachel Campos-Duffy cannot speak without saying communist pretty much every time she's on camera. She did it yesterday. I haven't put that one on Twitter yet because it has to be cut up a little bit, but she did just kind of out of nowhere whip in a communist comment, just, because why not? So this is a clip from Monday, and it's very classic. This is from Fox and Friends, very classic Rachel Campos-Duffy in every way.
In private money, and all of a sudden all this money shows up for illegal immigrants. And by the way, the illegals magically always appear in their shelters, magically always appear in black neighborhoods. The black community in Chicago is going, what the heck is going on? We didn't know there was all this money. I mean, we're raising, as Corey is, from private money, or they're being told there's no money for youth centers to keep kids off the street, or whatever the program is, even the homeless. But there's room and shelter space for illegals. So clearly it's frustrating, but it's more than that. It's revealing. I think a lot of African Americans are waking up to the fact that the Democrats maybe really didn't care about them, that they were just another voting bloc. And when this other voting bloc, which, when Joe Biden opened the border, they're coming through, they're having a lot more kids. They're a more reliable base, perhaps, for the Democrat Party. And now the black community is waking up and saying, hey, I think we're being replaced. We're being deprioritized for this new group that seems to be electorally a priority for the Democrat Party.
Okay, that I call that a very Rachel. If she'd said communism somewhere in the middle of that, or Marxism or socialism, it would be the quintessential Rachel Campos-Duffy rant. So there's so much to unpack here. For starters, she doesn't live in Chicago and doesn't have any firsthand knowledge about anything she's talking about there with migrants or various government programs in the city. Everything she said was vague. Everything was sort of a blanket statement. She also didn't include any specific information or provide any data to back up her claims about programs for undocumented immigrants versus black residents of Chicago. Some specifics would have helped, like this program at this school was closed down because of this. Great. Give me specifics. Don't just make blanket statements without anything to back it up. She's also wrong in terms of voting blocks. Black Americans have voted for Democrats in larger percentages than Latino voters. According to Pew Research, about 83% of Black Americans vote for Democrats, while only 61% of Latinos identify as Democrats or lean to the Democratic Party. Campos-Duffy also seems to think that undocumented immigrants have an easy time gaining full citizenship in the United States, including voting rights. Many undocumented immigrants will never achieve full citizenship status, and it can take legal immigrants several years to qualify to vote in state and federal elections. So if you've known an immigrant, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It can take years and years and years and years to go from green card to full citizen of the United States. It's a long, arduous process. It can be quite expensive. So just absolute nonsense. I might be doing a special podcast just on that trend because I'm noticing it more and more now of Fox using the black community, trying to sort of weaponize the Latino community against the black community and vice versa. Basically saying this group is taking something away from this group. They're both marginalized. Therefore, you should hate each other or resent each other. You know, at the same time saying that identity politics is bad, which is exactly what Fox does. They're constantly saying, oh, we can't have identity politics. And Democrats are always putting people into camps and saying that you're the black voter or you're the Latino voter. And people are so much more than their race. But guess what, Black Americans? Latinos are coming to take everything away from you. Basically, I mean, it's exactly what Fox does. And I've noticed a bunch of clips like that, so I might be doing like a bonus. I'm thinking about it right now. So we're going to move on. Before I move on to the last section of the podcast, very briefly, and I'm very, very tired this week, you can probably tell. Some folks, I'm going to do a combo right now. I'm just going to improvise this. I'm whipping it out. But here we go, because some people expressed they liked this new character that I did out of nowhere. And that new character is Matt Taibbi, who, you know, basically talk as if one side of your mouth is paralyzed or something, and that you're really low, and you're mumbling, and you're smug, and you're like, why did you even have me on the show? Because I'm too good for it, because I'm Matt Taibbi. Did you realize that I've mentioned squids when I write about Wall Street? Like, I've mentioned squids. I'm a great writer. I'm award-winning Matt Taibbi. And then to pair with Matt Taibbi would be, shut up, Matt Taibbi! I'm Judge Jeanine Pirro. And as you heard earlier, my ex-husband was a crook. Sure, he was small and Italian, and we matched each other like salt and pepper shakers. Look it up! And my son is a very attractive young man who looks kind of like a perfect blend of Lebanese and Italian. But why am I talking about this? You should look up my son. He's gorgeous. But why am I talking about this? I don't know, because I'm Judge Jeanine, and I am sick and tired of people making fun of President Trump, the greatest American ever. And how dare Odin is on my desk, ladies and gentlemen. Odin the cat is on my desk, and I'm out. Okay, very briefly, Odin is on my desk. He's now on my lap. Odin is a very needy cat. He doesn't meow. He never speaks. And he's just all black. And he has big ears and a big nose, smaller eyes. He's not big eyes for a cat. And he will just stare at me like, why aren't you petting me right now? Why aren't you petting me right now? Why are you looking at that other cat? Why are you looking? Mom, I love you. I love you. I don't think you understand. I love you. That's Odin. He's very needy. I call him my neurotic poet. And he's on my lap right now. He needs attention right now. I've been recording too long. He's mad. He's angry. He's not going to take it anymore. He's staring right at me. Just looking up, staring at me. Kind of a spooky cat. Perfectly named. So next up we have stories. Fox News ignored. Every week I compare the hours I've watched on Fox News to 5 hours of the PBS NewsHour. The following list are stories PBS covered that Fox News did not. We're going to start with updates in the Israel-Hamas War. This first one is a doozy. The bodies of 3 hostages taken by Hamas on October 7th were found by the IDF in Gaza. None of the shows I covered on Fox News last week covered this story. The network likes to present itself as being pro-Israel, so this was very glaring that this was omitted. An Indian national became the first foreign UN casualty in the Israel-Hamas War. Wabib An-Kail, 46, started working with the UN last month as a security service coordinator. As the Israeli military has ordered evacuations out of Rafah, roughly 500,000 people have been displaced from the area. Extremist Israeli settlers set fire to a truck filled with humanitarian aid headed for Gaza. Israeli soldiers defending the driver were also attacked by the settlers. The driver suffered minor injuries and received medical care. The IDF said it would seek legal action against the rioters. The White House condemned the attack. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant publicly criticized Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu over his lack of post-war plans for Gaza. Gallant said Netanyahu's lack of planning could mean that Israel would have to impose military and civilian rule over the enclave. The U.S. military finished construction on a floating pier to help get more humanitarian aid into Gaza. U.S. military personnel will not enter Gaza as part of the project. South Africa has asked the top court in the UN to order Israel to immediately withdraw from Rafah, the southernmost area of Gaza, where over 1 million Palestinians are crowded in makeshift refugee camps. Israel has argued that it has done everything it could to lessen civilian deaths. After President Biden paused shipment of 2,000-pound bombs for Israel, U.S. House members passed a bill that would force Biden to release the weapons. The White House has said Biden would veto the bill if it passes Congress, and the Democratic-led Senate will most likely reject the bill. Updates in the war in Ukraine. The U.S. State Department said that Putin's decision to replace his defense minister with an economist is a sign of desperation. French President Emmanuel Macron said he would send more military aid during a phone call with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Ukraine will also allow prisoners to serve in the military in exchange for the possibility of parole at the end of their service. The Ukrainian parliament passed a bill that will increase monetary penalties for men who avoid military conscription. The death toll from a collapsed building in Belgorod, Russia, rose to 17. According to Russia, the building was damaged by a Ukrainian-fired missile shot down by Russian air defenses. The Conflict Intelligence Team investigative group has cast doubt on the Russian claim, saying the apartment building was most likely hit by either a Russian missile or a bomb. Russian strikes near the port city of Odessa, Ukraine, killed 3 people and injured 3 others. Around 7,500 people have fled Kharkiv, Ukraine's second largest city. Putin has said he won't invade Kharkiv, but will use it as a buffer between Ukrainian and Russian forces. Climate disasters last week. The flooding in Brazil continues to get worse, and at least 147 people have died, and more than 120 are missing, while 620,000 have been displaced from their homes. The floods could continue as the rains haven't stopped. Heavy rains, cold lava, and torrents of mud have killed at least 37 people in the volcano slopes of Indonesia's Sumatra Island. The floods have submerged more than 100 homes. Smoke from more than 80 active wildfires in Canada created poor air quality across the upper Midwest. Now, moving on to the regular stories, crews started a controlled demolition of parts of what is left of the Francis Scott Key Bridge. It marked a major step in freeing the ship that rammed into the bridge, causing its collapse. Major airlines are suing the Department of Transportation over proposed changes that would require companies to disclose all add-on fees to airline flyers. The changes are set to take effect on July 1st. Zhang Zhan, a Chinese citizen journalist who served 4 years in prison for reporting on the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic, has gone missing. She was expected to be released from custody last Monday, but her whereabouts are unknown, which has concerned activists. FBI field offices around the country have reported an increase in sextortion cases involving minors. Users on social media lure children to send sexually explicit or nude photos and then use the images to extort money from their families. In some cases, children have committed suicide after they have been the subject of these attacks. Wholesale prices rose 0.5% last month, which was more than expected, while inflation cooled slightly from 3.5% to 3.4%. Georgia's parliament speaker vowed to override a presidential veto of a controversial law that critics say favors Russia and would be a threat to democracy. The legislation requires media and non-governmental organizations and other nonprofits to register as pursuing the interests of a foreign power if they receive more than 20% of their funding from abroad. Protests surrounding the law have erupted all over the country. The Supreme Court is forcing the state of Louisiana to create a new congressional district with a black majority population. The order allows the use of a map that has a majority black population in 2 of the state's 6 congressional districts. According to the CDC, drug overdose deaths slightly dropped last year. The report showed the first decline in deaths since 2015. President Biden signed a sweeping aviation bill designed to protect consumers and increase safety into law last week. The new law should boost U.S. air traffic control staffing, increase funding to avert runway close call incidents, and speed up refunds for canceled flights. A barge that collided with a bridge in Galveston, Texas, has spilled up to 2,000 gallons of toxic oil, according to officials. There were no injuries or deaths from the accident, but the cleanup will be costly. The Supreme Court rejected a conservative-led attempt to weaken the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. The justices ruled 7-2 that the way the agency is funded does not violate the Constitution, reversing a lower court. Last week marked the 70th anniversary of the Brown versus Board of Education case. Decades after the case, many of the nation's classrooms remain racially separate and unequal. David DePappy, the man who broke into the then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's home and attacked her husband with a hammer, was sentenced to 30 years in prison. Paul Pelosi, who was 82 at the time of the attack, suffered a skull fracture that required surgery. Fox News host promoted wild conspiracies about the attack, but neglected to follow up on the case once DePappy faced a criminal trial and was found guilty. Employees at a Mercedes plant in Alabama voted against joining a union. Alice Munro, a Nobel Prize-winning Canadian writer, died at the age of 92. She was known for her skill as a writer and for portraying ordinary people, especially women and girls, with grace and empathy. And those are all the stories. There were quite a lot of them, as there always are. A shocking amount, actually. Now we move on to By the Numbers, where I compare the top 5 topics on Fox News to the top 5 topics on PBS. I pick PBS because it is high quality, straight down the middle, nonpartisan news. We start with Fox. Number 1, 23%, Trump hush money trial. Number 2, 14% was blatant shilling for Trump as a candidate. So I call it Trump 2024, 14%. Next up, Biden bashing. So these are just excuses to tear down the President of the United States, 13%. Next up, 6%. The Kansas City Chiefs kicker commencement speech. Absolute madness that was 6%. And next up, the border crisis, which is an evergreen topic for the network, 5%. PBS, Trump hush money trial, 9%. Israel-Hamas War, which should be a big deal for Fox, but they just blatantly ignored it, 8%. Author profile, that's people promoting their books about various topics, 8%. Artist profile, a regular on the network, 8%. And then new tariffs for Chinese imports that the Biden administration has implemented. Fox also did talk about that. On PBS, it took up 4% of the network's airtime. Words used on Fox for the week ending May 19th, 2024. This one was a little boring. Trump, 567. That's a lot. Biden, 363. Inflation, 51. Economy, 45. Israel, 35. China, 26. Hamas, 13. Ukraine, 11. Stock market, 11. Hunter, for Hunter Biden, 9. AOC, as in Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, 6. And Iran, 1. I didn't check as many words because it was kind of a boring week. It just Trump and that trial dominated everything. And that is it for the podcast. If you like to check out more of what Decoding Fox News does, it's very funny. I got an email this week by someone who thought Decoding Fox News was a team of people. That is a common misconception. Decoding Fox News is me and 2 cats who really kind of just contribute to my mental health. If you would like to see more of my work, you can go to Twitter, also known as X, Threads, Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. For Facebook, I have a fan page where you can find the stuff I post, not my personal page. My fan page is called Juliet Jeske fan page. Juliet spelled like Romeo, and Juliet Jeske. It's Prussian for hedgehog. No kidding. And then you can also, it's so random. It's my ex-husband's last name. Then you can also go to my YouTube, which is under Juliet Jeske. But if you type in Decoding Fox News, you'll find me because everything's labeled with Decoding Fox News. Also, if you want to become a paid subscriber, go to my Substack channel for Decoding Fox News or Patreon for Decoding Fox News. I have various different levels that you can subscribe to. And if you want to just give me a one-time donation, you can go to Twitter, there's a little dollar sign next to my name. You can click that. It'll take you to, I think, Cash App. I don't know. I'm tired. I'm really tired right now. Odin and Thor, the official mascots of the podcast, send their love. And you can see a version of this podcast on the Resolute Square YouTube channel. They basically take this audio and they stick it on YouTube for people who like to listen to podcasts on YouTube. I don't get it, but there are people who do. I've seen the numbers. So this week, and I'll be working on this as soon as I proof this recording, I'm going to be doing a extended, it's probably going to be mini videos, with short videos where I break down all the lies from Trump's rally in Wildwood, New Jersey. I don't think we can do this enough. I think people need to fact check this idiot every single day. I think he's a menace to our country. He's a threat to democracy. He's a megalomaniac, narcissistic, crazy person. I will not hold back my opinion. After January 6th, all bets are off. The man's a criminal. So again, thank you from me, Odin and Thor. I will see you at the next podcast.
Resolute Square.